Hello and welcome to the Broken Sword. Today we are looking at the confrontation between Gandalf and the Witch-king.
Build me an army worthy of Mordor.
This is a first dive back into a series that I'd started before, and that is comparing the potential scenes of book versus the Peter Jackson movies. Many people, myself included, had our introduction to the world of Tolkien through going to the cinema and sitting down to watch The Fellowship of the Ring back in 2001. Now from here, I went and dived into the books. However, many people would have just stuck to the movies and not gotten any further than that, and there is no problem with that at all, of course. Or perhaps you were even the opposite in this side of things. Some people may have fallen in love with the book so much that they never connected with the adaptations, and so they never really watched them in any detail. So this is where this series comes into things. I thought that I could look at certain events like we are today, or perhaps look at the differences in characters and how they were adapted for the movies as well. So if this is something that you would like to see more of after today, then please let me know in the comment section below by leaving the comment of BVM so that I know that you all want more. But for now, let us get into the video at hand. Gandalf the White versus the Witch-king of Angmar. This is one of the potential great clashes of power that we could have seen in The Lord of the Rings, and to start this one off, I think it is only right to start by looking into the book version of events and at the characters involved. This moment takes place within the Return of the King part of the Lord of the Rings books, where we get a confrontation between one of the Istari sent to assist in the wars against Sauron and the leader of the Nazgul, the Witch-king. This happens at the main gates during the Siege of Minas Tirith in the year 3019 of the Third Age. Here, Gandalf the White, riding on Shadowfax, is the only one able and willing to resist the Lord of the Nazgul as he attempts to enter the city after Grond has broken through the Great Gate. The drums rolled and rattled. With a vast rush, Grond was hurled forward by huge hands. It reached the gate. It swung. A deep boom rumbled through the city like thunder running in the clouds, but the doors of iron and posts of steel withstood the stroke. Then, the Black Captain rose in his stirrups and cried aloud in a dreadful voice, speaking in some forgotten tongue words of power and terror to rend both heart and stone. Thrice he cried, thrice the great ram boomed, and suddenly upon the last stroke the gate of Gondor broke, as if stricken by some blasting spell it burst asunder. There was a flash of searing lightning, and the doors tumbled in riven fragments to the ground. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul, a great black shape against the fires beyond he loomed up, grown to a vast menace of despair. In rode the Lord of the Nazgul, under the archway that no enemy ever yet had passed, and all fled before his face. All save one. There waiting, silent and still in the space before the gate, sat Gandalf upon Shadowfax. Shadowfax, who alone among the free horses of the earth endured the terror, unmoving, steadfast as a graven image in Rath Dinnan.
"You cannot enter here,"
said Gandalf, and the huge shadow halted.
"Go back to the abyss prepared for you. Go back! Fall into the nothingness that awaits you and your master. Go!"
The Black Rider flung back his hood, and behold, he had a kingly crown, and yet upon no head visible was it set. The red fires shone between it, and mantled shoulders vast and grey. From a mouth unseen there came a deadly laughter.
Old fool,
He said,
old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it? Die now and curse in vain.
and with that he lifted high his sword, and flames ran down the blade. Gandalf did not move, and in that very moment, away behind in some courtyard of the city, a cock crowed. Shrill and clear he crowed, recking nothing over wizardry or war, welcoming only the morning that in the sky far above the shadows of death was coming with the dawn. And as if in answer there came from far away another note. Horns, horns, horns. In dark Mindoluin's sides they dimly echoed, great horns of the north wildly blowing. Rohan, had come at last. And so here, the Witch King quickly departs due to the arrival of the Rohirrim. But if the Witch King had not left, if he had ignored the arrival of the Men of Rohan, then what would the outcome of this confrontation ended up being? First of all, let's have a look at the wizard, Gandalf the White. Gandalf was one of the Maiar and was originally named Olorin, and although in a sense he is immortal, that is in reference to his spirit. While he was in Middle-earth, he was in a physical body that could be killed. Gandalf was sent by the Valar as one of the 5 Maiar, also known as the Istari, to contest against the growing evil of Sauron in Middle-earth. This means Gandalf, or more accurately Olorin, has existed since before the music of the Ainur by Ilúvatar. Olorin was even considered as one of the wisest of all of the Maiar, and on a side note here, this is actually one of the main reasons for Saruman's jealousy of him. Saruman, or Kurumo as he was known before, knew that Olorin was wiser and more powerful than he was, and so became jealous of this power and the respect that he was receiving for it. But anyway, back to Gandalf. We have to take into account that as when he was first sent to Middle-earth, it was as Gandalf the Grey. In this role, it was to be as a guide and an advisor, not a warrior. He was not there to single-handedly take on the forces of Sauron and fix things quickly for the Free Peoples, but instead he should encourage and guide them to achieving their own victory. When sent back as Gandalf the White, he was given a greater percentage of his true abilities, along with a higher sense of power and leadership. In other words, it is like he leveled up, upgraded his stats, and came back with a vengeance. Therefore, he was without a doubt more powerful than when he was clothed as the Grey. But why is this information important? Well, if we now look back at an earlier chapter in The Lord of the Rings, specifically here at the Council of Elrond, there is a bit of a hint as to just how this duel may have turned out. After all, if you have never read the book, Gandalf had already fought off, if not bested, not just the Witch King, but all 9 of the Nazgul previously.
I galloped to Weathertop like a gale, and I reached it before sundown on my second day from Bree, and they were there before me. They drew away from me, for they felt the coming of my anger, and they dared not face it while the sun was in the sky. But they closed round at night, and I was besieged on the hilltop in the old ring of Amonsul. I was hard to put to it indeed. Such light and flame cannot have been seen on Weathertop since the war beacons of old.
So admittedly, at the end of this all, Gandalf did retreat, but they were scared of his power when the sun was in the sky. This does show though, that even when all 9 of the Nazgul were together, when the sun was not in the sky, they still did not come out victorious either. So at this point, so far the facts are very much pointing to a Gandalf victory, aren't they? But we cannot decide for sure without having a quick look at the other side too, so let's have a deeper look at the Witch-king of Angmar. It does appear throughout the story that there is a foreshadowing of a climactic battle between Gandalf and the Witch-king. After all, there was the prophecy of no man being able to kill him, which does seem to, for the most part, imply that it will be the wizard that will be the one to finally bring him down. And this also implies that they must at least be close in power for a prophecy like this to work for this kind of story. Also here, we need to circle back a little bit to address this point of the battle at Weathertop from the side of the Witch King, as it was a bit one-sided towards Gandalf from what I was saying before. Although the Nazgul did fail in defeating Gandalf, it is possibly hard to argue that this was really their true aim, or that they were as powerful at this point either. So if this was not their true aim, then, well, what was their main objective? Well, at this point within the story, they had been sent on their mission to regain the One Ring for Sauron. At this point, they were travelling with the information of the Shire as to where it might be located. This meant that after following Gandalf from Bree and attacking him at Weathertop, it became apparent that Gandalf did not have it in his possession. Therefore, they did not really need to risk themselves and continue with this assault. So, possibly, it is hard to argue how this would have ended if the 9 had truly continued the assault with the mission to kill. You would think that Gandalf would have tired and that they would have been victorious in the end, but this was unlikely to have been without suffering themselves, so why waste the energy from their point of view? So here, they instead had 4 of the riders follow him just in case he managed to hide something, while the others hid until Aragorn and the hobbits appeared, where they then attacked, and as we know, Frodo gets stabbed by the Witch-king. But now back to the subject at hand, and for the next bit we should really look at what we know about the powers that the Witch-king possesses. After all, his power has grown when compared to how he was at the time of the events previously mentioned at the Council of Elrond by Gandalf as well. Here, we will take a look at a short passage from the letter 210 written by J R R Tolkien, and in this letter he addresses a common misconception that he believes people have when they think about the Nazgul, and in it he says, "Their peril is almost entirely due to the unreasoning fear which they inspire, like ghosts. They have no great physical power against the fearless, but what they have, and the fear that they inspire, is enormously increased in darkness. The Witch-king, their leader, is more powerful in all ways than the others, but he must not yet be raised to the stature of Volume 3. There, put in command by Sauron, he is given an added demonic force, but even in the Battle of the Pelennor, the darkness had only just broken." From Tolkien's own hand, the Witch-king in Volume 3, in other words, The Return of the King, is more powerful than the one in Volume 1, in other words, The Fellowship of the Ring. After all, how on earth would the Witch-king feel any degree of confidence in a one-on-one duel with Gandalf after losing to a less powerful version of him in the not-too-distant past? That is, unless his power had increased greatly too. It is said, after all, that the Witch-king's power is linked to Sauron's in some form to some degree, and by the time of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, Sauron was starting to surge with power himself, which in turn enhanced the Witch-king with that so-called added demonic force. So after looking at this, despite the improvements to the Witch-king, I believe that from the books it does very much appear that Gandalf would still have easily come out on top, if they were actually going to fight after he had returned as the White. He was one of the Maiar sent back with enhanced power against a servant of Sauron. In the story, it should have been no match. The Istari were never meant to be leading from the very front and directly deciding events of Middle-earth by their own hands. They were there to get the Free Peoples to find their own strength and methods of victory. Whereas, on the other hand, the Witch-king was second in command to Sauron, and there with the purpose to lead his armies. I feel that we could be confident in saying, if Gandalf truly used his power to fight, and I mean really fight, then it is hard to see him not coming out on top. But you may be wondering, why am I really talking about the what if between Gandalf and the Witch-king when I'm supposed to be talking about the differences between the book and the movie? Well, now that we've rounded off the book versions of events with some of the backstory, we will now move on to the movie adaptation version of this event, and you will understand now why all of this is so important. Because after all, a lot of people do get confused on this subject purely because of the movies, but it does not need quite as deep of a dive into the background now as the books did. So, in the extended edition of Peter Jackson's The Return of the King, we see the Witch-king on his foul beast confront Gandalf on one of the higher levels of Minas Tirith. And here, well, this happens. And this is one of the issues that people can bring up that the movies potentially have. When we look at it from a purely cinema point of view, this decision was most likely made for the reason of increasing tension for the audience. Without the threat of a powerful leader in their army, then the forces of evil would appear as, well, no real threat without one. If you were as confident in Gandalf in the movie as you are in the book, then perhaps some of the battle would lose a certain amount of its threat, even if this is all on a subconscious level. So, when you actually compare it to the book, they have very much nerfed Gandalf's power, and again in my opinion here, to make you not think victory would be a certainty for the good guys. I mean, if you think about it, at that point during the siege, Minas Tirith is being overrun, and then when Gandalf tries to make a stand, he quickly and effortlessly really has his staff broken. At this point, what hope can there be in this moment with Gandalf flat on his back? Well, at least that is until. But anyway, in regards to the possibility of this happening on the pages, as powerful as the Witch-king may have become, there was little to no way that he was breaking the staff of a Maiar. And that is basically what the main difference all comes down to. It is almost like the difference between the book and the movie is that they swapped their level of power around for that added dramatic effect. And this is really the main difference between those two scenes. Yes, you have the little bits like in the movie it happens on a higher tier, whereas in the book it happens at the gate. And then obviously also the little things of the Witch King being on a horse in the book, whereas he is on one of the foul beasts in the movie. But the main difference all comes down to the levels of power that both the Witch King and Gandalf possess, and how the end of this confrontation would have gone. So there we have it, a look at the epic confrontation of Gandalf the White versus the Witch-king of Angmar in the book versus the movie. I strongly believe that at the end of the day, Gandalf surely has to be the one who always would come out on top. I just do not believe, however confident he may have appeared, that the Witch-king could ever truly have taken down the White Wizard. After all, Gandalf has already fought off all 9 of the Nazgul at once, as well as defeated a Balrog when in his weaker the Grey form. So, as the White, even standing across from a power-boosted Witch-king, I still cannot see it going any but one way. But I will also add to this here, it is not like it was impossible for a weaker being to overcome a more powerful one. After all, look at some of the other events that have happened in the histories that we know. Elendil and Gil-galad defeated Sauron. Fingolfin came close to defeating Morgoth. Glorfindel could defeat many Balrogs in one battle. And even just from The Hobbit, a simple man, Bard, could kill the strongest dragon that was around at that time. Meaning, even if the Witch King was, on paper, weaker, he may have had a method to win. Obviously magic is powerful, it doesn't come down to brute force. Albeit again, and I know I keep kind of going back on myself, the underdog story does tend to always favour the good guys rather than the evil side. So, at the end of the day, this does just show how much they knocked Gandalf down a peg or two for the movies, and increased the threat of the Witch King to go alongside this. In the movie, the Witch King literally has Gandalf down on the floor, basically giving up at that point as it appears by his face. Whereas in the book, Gandalf did not back down and stood toe to toe at the gates against him. But that is where I will end things for today, and so it is time for my question for you all, and that is, what is your opinion on this confrontation? Do you prefer the book or movie version of these events? Is it better to have the evil commander cause a greater threat? Or should Gandalf always have been the more powerful being? I would like you to let me know all of your thoughts and opinions on this topic in the comment section below. And also as a quick reminder to leave that comment of BVM as well if you would like more of these comparison type videos. And if you would as well, why not leave a suggestion with that comment of who or what you would like me to compare in the future as well. And now that we are at the end, I would also like to remind you all we do not just have this channel but 2 others as well. They are the 6th Ranger if you enjoy your Power Rangers content, and History of Dragon Ball if you like your Dragon Ball content. Links for both of those channels will of course be in the description below if you would like to check them out. And now it is time to shout out our patrons. Firstly, our Divine Power team members of Kevin, Abram, Matt and Glorfindel of Gondolin, you are all awesome. And a big thanks to our Fire Demon tier members of Nashith, Denver Steel and Gregory, and as well I cannot forget the Wizard Staff tier members of John, Andrew and Pirate747. You are all true legends of the Bro Hero. And finally, if you've not already, please do all that great stuff, hit the like button on the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon if you want to be notified of all of our future uploads, as, you know, sometimes YouTube forgets to do that with people. And so, thank you once more if you have managed to reach the end of this video with me today, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.